What's up everyone, Alex here. Around when Star Ocean: The Last Hope was about to come out, I recalled reading someone describe it as anime Star Trek. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Because for the most part, Star Ocean has never been about exploring strange new worlds and boldly going where no man has gone before. Instead, it involves itself with a story that is typically centered around one planet's plight, with other planets serving in auxiliary roles, such as maybe a dungeon or two. This sentiment doesn't change with the Divine Force, which is very much okay with the notion of making everyone on Aster 4 know that Raymond came from outer space, despite the group's best efforts to hide it. But much like how his foreign personage makes everyone around him think that he's got the chops to save a whole entire planet, one does have to wonder, is Star Ocean: The Divine Force the series' last hope? Star Ocean: The Divine Force is an action RPG with two selectable main protagonists, developed by Tri-Ace and published by Square Enix, who provided this game code. The footage that you're seeing right now is from the PS5 version of the game. Coming into the full version of Star Ocean: The Divine Force, I had my own concerns about the battle system, and thankfully, now that I've literally spent a full playthrough of the game mastering the system, I can confidently say that I actually really enjoyed it. At first, the AP system seems really unwieldy because, for one, you're going to start with just a few pips of your AP, but what the design really entails is that the player play the game well, rewarding the player with more AP slots the better you play the game. So better dodging, nailing your combos, and just outright not getting hit will give you the AP that you need to press on the offense. That being said, this isn't one of those games that you can just mash buttons on, because your AP will still run out. It's at that point that I figured that the best way to approach this combat system, while action-based, is to be more deliberate in what combo I should use depending on the situation. And the fact that you can actually mix and match these and create your own strings of combos really forces you to be intimately familiar with the game's skills and abilities, which I really like. And again, I will say that it might take a little bit of time, especially given that the Divine Force just kind of thrusts you into battle as opposed to taking you to a different screen. But I have no doubt that you'll have the confidence to just use the Duma and zip right into combat and just engage with the system. It really becomes fun and very rewarding. Outside of the combat though, one of my favorite aspects of the Divine Force is the ability to explore massive areas. I think the addition of the Duma and allowing you to basically boost yourself to different locations and elevations really add a level of dimension in the Divine Force that just wasn't there before, making areas feel grander and larger scale than what it is. That being said, the areas themselves are pretty huge, so I don't think the game has any problem making it look like the areas that you're in are massive. Everything is massive in this game. While my opinion on the exploration hasn't changed from my impressions video, I will say that a majority of my criticisms from that video still applies to the full game. Without rehashing too much of what I said in that video, I want to note the most prevalent criticisms that I have of the game, which is that the camera can be too lazy when you're locked onto an enemy, with no option to adjust this by the way, and also the fact that the camera does have a really difficult time of tracking the player and showing you what's happening. It can get stuck behind environmental walls or trees, and it can get really frustrating, especially when you're just trying to play well, which is what's needed so that you can expand your AP meter. One of the other criticisms that I lobbied the game's demo is the fact that you have to use the radar to find the next target to lock onto. The game has no option to auto-target after defeating the current enemy that you're targeting, which makes combat feel unnecessarily tedious at times, which is a shame because genuinely improving these two aspects would dramatically elevate the combat experience. One thing that I did notice is that lip syncing beyond the opening cutscene seems to be done procedurally, so that they flap in time with the audio. But how the mouths animate looks like it's done at a lower frame rate on the PS5 version, so frames are noticeably skipped. I know that this might sound like unnecessary nitpicking, but when presentational aspects of a game feels off, especially in scenes where the camera is practically focused on the game's characters. It's really hard not to notice.
Anyway, my job is to transport cargo between planets, and we now know Duma was my cargo.
And despite some of the reviews out there saying that there's no facial changes or expression changes whatsoever, there are different expressions found in the game. It's just that they're way too subtle to actually be noticeable, meaning it's not so different than the default face reactions. In fact, while I was playing the game, I was actually really surprised that there was like a very subtle reaction change in one of the characters, and I was like, oh, so they can react to things that's happening in front of them. Another criticism that I kept hearing about Divine Force is the quality of its character models. I personally didn't mind how they look, but I can certainly understand the criticisms of the models feeling very plasticky. I think it has more to do with the shaders Tri-Ace used to render its characters and less about the models themselves. But when you take them all together, the models do have this modern yet old quality to them, which is a shame, especially given that the original artwork represents what could have been. Many of the characters in Divine Force were designed by Akiman, who you'll know as the character designer for Street Fighter II. And given how iconic those designs are, and seeing this game's original artwork themselves, it truly is a shame that the game's character models never really matched that standard of quality. But it is what it is. And while I do love exploration in this game, there are invisible walls here. Like, I remember in one of the early areas, even in the demo, I try to reach this kind of building that's like situated on a cliffside and try to use Duma to reach it, only to find an invisible wall that really stops me from getting anywhere close to it. Granted, this doesn't happen often, but it can feel discouraging, especially given how seemingly free and massive and expansive this world's areas feel. One other concern that I had starting this game was that the skill tree just feels like it's littered with a bunch of skills all over the place, and majority of them are basically stat ups. And I did feel that for a good part of my playthrough, the progression can feel a bit unclear. Like, for example, should I spend my skill points improving each of the abilities that I put in my combos? Or should I spend it on the skill tree to unlock more? Also, side quest objectives feel like they're purposely obtuse in some cases, and it also doesn't help that the UI has just the worst choice of fonts, which is immediately apparent when you view the game's map in full view. This needed a thicker font to be more legible, but from a 55-inch TV sitting at a distance, it was really challenging to read. Taking all of this into consideration, Divine Force's shortcomings can be summed up as a game whose themes look ahead into the future, but with its feet seemingly cemented in the past. 6 years of not having a new Star Ocean game mean that the expectations of the JRPG crowd will be fashioned by numerous games that have become instant classics, making some of Divine Force's missteps feel even larger than they are. But here's the thing. What's surprising to me is that despite all of this stuff, and there's a lot, right, that the game still kept me playing. Like, I honestly couldn't wait to see what the next area looked like, and most of all, I wanted to know where the story was headed. It helped that the characters themselves project this very interesting vibe that you just really want to get to know. Even its most annoying characters really made me want to know, like, what is their deal? Because for one particular character, which I'm not going to mention, they felt very standoffish and very protective of not just themselves, but of one other character. And it's only later on that the game reveals what they're really going through. And as you might expect from what I said earlier, the story is firmly rooted in Laeticia's world and her plight. And in a way, Raymond, being a foreigner himself, kind of stood as a perfect stand-in for our presence in this world, and made me really curious about what else I was going to encounter in this adventure. And while I complain about the game's lip flaps, the English voice acting is actually pretty decent, despite some interesting characterizations. Never did I feel like that it was annoying enough for me to be like, okay, I'm going to use Japanese voice acting moving forward. But certainly the option is there for people who would rather prefer that language. Choice is always good. I think what it boils down to is that the Divine Force is really good at setting the atmosphere for its story and its gameplay. And when I really think about the things that I really do love about this game, it does revolve around those aspects. While a medieval fantasy kind of setting isn't exactly new, the way that the game plays around with these concepts is truly fascinating. And I believe that's one of the reasons why I kept coming back to this game. Unfortunately, I was only able to play the game through Raymond's perspective, but I will say that the shorter 25-ish hour campaign leads me to believe that the reason why it's a bit shorter is to encourage folks who have finished a game to do a repeated playthrough as the other character you didn't play as. I suspect that the folks getting up to 40 hours of playtime may either be combining both playthroughs or spending a lot of time doing side quests. And so, we've come to the end, and to try to answer the question of whether or not the Divine Force is the series' last hope. Quite honestly, I have a really tough time answering that question. While there are genuinely things that I liked in the game, such as its fast combat, great story, and memorable characters, there are many other things that I feel could distract players from enjoying their time with it. The fact that the game just has an inconsistent time making sure that you're seeing what's important in combat is one such example. Indeed, after 6 long years, I don't think it's unreasonable to say that some Star Ocean fans have had high hopes for the series' return. And while the Divine Force certainly is better than its predecessor in most respects, the feeling of trying to usher this massive franchise into the future is like trying to steer a gargantuan ship like the Titanic away from an impending iceberg crash. Dramaticisms aside, if you can manage to get past these criticisms, there's actually a lot of good to be had in this brisk RPG adventure. And it does give me some hope, despite Tri-Ace's financial woes. And if it's good enough that it's making me want to play through Letitia's storyline, then I think it's good enough for anyone to experience an adventure that'll have us traveling across the ocean of stars all over again. Thanks for watching my review of Star Ocean: The Divine Force. If you're playing through the game, what do you think of it so far? And for the folks who are checking out this game through this video, what do you think? Post your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk about it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.